Hi there, my name is Susie Price. I'm with Priceless Professional Development. Today's topic is podcasting for prospects and long-term loyal clients. This is a breakout session that I did at the International TTI SI Conference, January 2018, Scottsdale, Arizona. I felt energized, determined, unsure, and vulnerable all at the same time. My stomach was flip-flopping and my breathing shallow. What was I doing? Meeting with my attorney to start the LLC paperwork for my new business. And that was a while ago, January 2004. The next day, I felt both afraid and confident as I plunked down money for my business post office box and the creation of my logo and website, both of which felt like a big deal and like I was stepping out of my comfort zone. Are people going to think I'm crazy to do this? Can I do this? Am I crazy? Even with my mixed emotions and the fact that my first logo and website were pretty basic and far from perfect, I hoped and had some level of knowing that starting my own consulting and coaching business was the answer to my search for the best way to use my talents, the best way for me to make a difference in the world, and the best way for me to make money and to feel on purpose and in charge of my life. Well, I didn't really know what I was doing or how it would all turn out. I did know that my life experience, education, my natural talents and strengths, my corporate work at places like NCR, Oracle, and State Farm had all come together and led me to that new starting point. And since that time, 14 years later, my sales and my business continue to grow. I have amazing clients and totally cool colleagues and work that I really enjoy. And it's all working out way better than I could have even thought possible. So much of my journey as a business owner, consultant, and facilitator has been a parallel journey of growth and expansion, gaining both external knowledge about running a business and being a consultant and internal knowledge, learning about myself and about how to bring all of who I am to every interaction. As I grew over time, both personally and professionally, I began to look for more ways to express myself, more creative things that I could do, and wanted to figure out how to share what I was learning in more detail. At the same time, I wanted to create more I'm already interested in you prospects, warm prospects, because I don't do or like to do a hard sell. I wanted to find a way to stand out from the crowd. It seems like there were consultants everywhere, and I wanted to provide more value to my clients so that they would stay loyal and never want to work with anyone else. I wanted to find a way to shut out the competition while doing what is natural to me, talking, sharing knowledge, and creating things. So in stepped the idea of doing a podcast. The first podcast that I remember listening to was by health guru Rob Wolf. He wrote Paleo Solution. I was fascinated with the topic. It's one of my hobbies is health and nutrition, but I was even more enthralled with his interviews and the ease of learning from him while doing the dishes and walking my dog. And while I was listening to him, I started to feel like I knew him, like we could be friends. I liked the format. And I recalled way back in 2005 or so, Bill Brooks from the Brooks Group talking about creating audio files as follow-up to workshops. I had tried that and abandoned most of the idea due to the technical challenge of the process. But it got me thinking, maybe there's something in podcasting for me. So from there, I started listening to podcasts about podcasting. My favorite is The School of Podcasting by Dave Jackson. He has also served as one of my coaches. Now, while I have a few things going for me, I have average technical skills. I majored in journalism in college, and I love to learn. I absolutely did not know what I was doing. At times, getting started, it felt like I was walking in the dark, trying not to stub my toe or fall over. I didn't know what I didn't know, and that was stressful. So, it's February 2015. I was feeling energized, determined, unsure, and vulnerable all at the same time. My stomach was flip-flopping and my breathing shallow. Guess what I was doing this time? Holding my first podcast interview with an assessment certification client. I struggled through the process of getting the episode edited and the show notes created. And the panic I was feeling was because my finger was hovering over the publish and make public button of my first Wake Up Eager Workforce podcast. The sound quality of that first episode and my interviewing skills, well, let's just say, they're not perfect. But just like starting my business, I had a sense that podcasting was the marketing and service answer I had been looking for. Today, 40-plus episodes later, podcasting is an integral part of my business. It's helped me grow personally and professionally and helped me create loyal, never-leave clients. And I've grown to love the whole process of being a podcast producer. The title of my podcast is The Wake Up Eager Workforce. I've published 42 episodes so far, and I've interviewed 22 different experts, including several of my key clients and a couple of best-selling authors. I've had over 11,000 downloads, and since all of the content is evergreen, and I have a solid process for promoting all of the episodes on social media, plus I keep adding new episodes, I expect my download numbers to grow exponentially. On the PricelessProfessional.com website, I've had a maximum of 608 new visitors per day, with daily page views of 1,800 to 2,700, equal to about 56,000 page views per month. All of that is a positive indication that more people are finding my site by way of my podcast and staying on my website to learn more about us and more about Priceless. And so I believe that I've become more sticky with my clients. They call me back time and time again, and they tell me often, "We trust you." And some of this is a result of my podcast. They share that they like the additional content, and since many of my episodes are directly from classes and programs I offer to clients or in response to problems they're grappling with, they like that as well because it meets their needs. So I'm here today because I want to share some information with you that will help you avoid some of the pitfalls that I fell into. Specifically, what I'm going to share here today are the problems podcasting has solved for me, the biggest obstacles that I ran into and how to avoid them, and 3 mind traps that could hurt your success. I'll also share an online link with how to get started steps and all of the resources that I use and have found helpful while starting and doing my podcast. So I'm here today. During this talk, I want to be of service. And if you're listening to this on my webpage, feel free to know that you can contact me via my contact page here on the website. If you have particular questions, shoot me an email or give me a call. So let's start with the problems that podcasting has solved for me. Well, the first problem is it's a crowded marketplace, and I wanted to figure out how to stand out. So let's look at websites and blogs compared to podcasting, and here's some statistics. There are 1.24 billion websites in the world, and over 2 million blog posts are published daily. There are about 250,000 active podcasts being published, and here's an interesting statistic, 42 million Americans listen to a podcast weekly. So a lot of people are listening to podcasts. That's 15% of the total U.S. population. And if you take that statistic and you compare it, 3% of the U.S. population go to the movies weekly. 15% are listening to podcasts weekly. So that's an interesting statistic in regard to how many people are listening nowadays. And from Libsyn, which is my media host, one of the experts there, said that for every 2,000 blogs, there's one podcast. So it is definitely a way to stand out. So in regards to standing out, nowadays when I do coaching and training proposals and packages, I have a whole library of audio resources that I consider my intellectual property, and I get to add more value, and I position those audios in some of my proposals as follow-up material for participants. Doing a podcast has helped me hone my skill set. Every interview, every script I write hones my knowledge and learning. It solidifies my experience and grows my confidence. So it has helped me sharpen the saw and be on that path of continuous learning and growing. My social media posts, I use the podcasting to stand out on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and on my newsletter. So I use all the different podcasts in the social media world, which has given me some more traction via social media and a little bit more visibility. People click on the posts, they find out more about you, they listen. I am positioned more as an expert because I'm paired with people such as the Amazon Way author, culture and tech guru from Atlanta, an international author from Harvard Business Review, and more. I've also been able to interview some of my key clients and people who are experts in markets that I serve. So it's helped me stand out from the crowd for all of these reasons. Now let's look at another problem. Our sales cycle in consulting can be long. And what I want, as I mentioned in the opening, is I like warm leads. I don't like to do the hard sell or try to work the sales cycle. I want it to be a shorter sales cycle. So my podcast has helped with that in many different ways, and here's one example. That first podcast that I mentioned that I was panicky about with poor audio quality and my less than stellar interview skills, well, that was an interview I did with a client who had just gotten certified as a certified professional behavior analyst. She enjoyed being featured and sharing her knowledge, and that helped. And the time we spent doing that interview helped us build a stronger working relationship. And later on, after the episode is up, I have a call from a certification prospect. They were considering having 4 of their learning and development leaders get certified in DISC. So one of the resources that I sent to her was that interview that I did, so they could listen to a fellow learning and development colleague and her experience around the certification. And the next day, they purchased 4 DISC certification packages. So that helps with the sales cycle. People get to know you better. They build trust with you. And speaking of that, when I work with clients, how do I make sure I get more work with them? And so, we all know we're going into a new client, and we're going to walk into a room of people we do not know, and they're with 10 executives that we've never met. And we're gonna do a full day session. Well, do you know what it's like? You know how awkward that can be a little bit, or to get it started and get everybody warmed up and get them less resistant. But do you know what it's like to have some of them hug you? Those are the high eyes, of course. And others express genuine appreciation for you, even though they've never met you in person. They had all been listening to the podcast. They all said, "We feel like we know you." And of course, we had a wonderful work day together. Their natural resistance was lowered. And they had greater ease around acceptance and trust, and it helped us make great strides working together more effectively. And the work we did that day far exceeded the CEO's expectations, and that was a year and a half ago, and since then they've spent $120,000 with us. So it does help you do more work with clients and helps build trust, makes you more effective. So those are the the problems podcasting has solved for me. Now let's look at the biggest obstacles and how to avoid them. So some of the biggest obstacles are first one is getting started. There's a lot of details to figure out, and it can feel overwhelming, and it might stop you before you start. So I have given you a lot of details in the podcasting page here. If you go to pricelessprofessional.com/podcasting 2018, password Wake Up Eager, you will see details on equipment, and let's just go through some of the additional details. First, I suggest that you listen to podcasts. Listen to the big ones like Tim Ferriss and some of I like Bulletproof Radio, where they have a big following. I've got links to those on that page. And you can listen to other people who are in our field. You could listen to my podcast. The Brooks Group has a podcast. Harvard Business Review has a podcast. You can get a coach. I am not coaching on podcasting, so I would not be your person for coaching. I'm happy to share any info I have, but I would say get a coach, and I've got several that I prefer, and the ones that I use, I mentioned the School of Podcasting. I use that person. Get basic equipment. You don't need the fanciest or highest end equipment. Basic equipment works. That's what I have. You need to get a media host. That's where you put your audio files. You do not want to put them on your computer alone or try to put them on your WordPress page, or I use SiteCell. You'll run out of enough storage, so you don't want to put the media files on your website. So you need to get a media host. I recommend Libsyn, Libsyn, and I have a link to them on this page. There's some planning worksheets that I found that could be helpful to you, and it was a $16 download on Etsy. I found them after the fact, but they might be a way to think through. And one last thing is I always script out every podcast. So I want to be very deliberate about what I share, and then I script it, I write it out, and then because I know what I want to say, but then I let it be free form once I actually speak. But the scripting helps. Another big obstacle is finding time. I probably spend at least 3 to 5 hours on each podcast. There's more time needed than that on each podcast, but I have hired an audio editor, and I use the podcasting group. There's a link. That's who I use to edit my podcast. It costs anywhere from, I think, $60 to $70 to edit a podcast, and it depends on how much time you spend and how many services you get. The other thing is I do very complete show notes. And if you go to our wakeupeagerworkforce.com, you'll be able to see all the links to all the podcasts that I have here. But I now used to do them myself, but I make sure that each of the show notes pages are search engine optimized, and I now have our client services manager, Shauna Adenolfi, who's here. She is actually doing the show notes. So getting somebody to help you with the show notes, there are people who will help you do that, including that audio editor. And then if you outsource those two things, then you can put any time you spend on scripting and recording. The last obstacle that gets people is increasing listeners. The biggest thing that I do is search engine optimization. The web platform that I use has taught me how to use that really well, and I make sure that most podcasts are under words and phrases that people search for. They're highly searched for, and maybe you can land on a higher Google page if not too many people have also written articles on that. So you just get some SEO help on that. On the web page there, I've got some information about my tool that I use. Shauna uses Hootsuite for social media, so she creates headlines for every podcast and then loads them into Hootsuite, and then Hootsuite it schedules links, so you're constantly populating social media with your podcast headlines. Virtual assistant help with someone like Shauna, who is absolutely wonderful, is key for me. I promote the podcast in my newsletter. I share episodes with clients when it's relevant to their coaching goals. I add the episodes to proposals as part of what they receive. You're going to receive, in addition to my facilitation or assessments, you will receive an audio file of such and such, related to their goal. I share relevant information with prospects, like I mentioned, around the DISC certification. And I make sure that I make podcast topics based on specific client requests and problems, so things that are very relevant to things that they're working through and on. Right? So those are some tips around some obstacles. The 3 mind traps that could hurt your success. There are 3. Someone might steal my ideas. And around that, nobody's going to even know that you have ideas that matter if you don't share. So don't hold back. Give value. Share what you know. They're going to say when they hear all that you share, wow, they gave that much? I can't imagine what I'm going to get when I actually hire her. So, and there's something at play here, reciprocity. I know you all have heard of it. It's a social norm that people respond to a positive action with another positive action. So if you're kind and helpful actions are generally rewarded. So while I don't expect give something to get something, that does seem to be what happens, and I just openly share my knowledge and insight and ideas. And if somebody's stolen my ideas, it has not hurt me at all. In fact, my business has just grown. So don't hold back. If you do hold back, your podcasts are going to be boring, uninteresting, and sales pitchy. And you don't want that. That is not going to help you build your listener base. Mind trap number 2 is, what if everybody doesn't like me? So that was a little bit of why I was so nervous when I had to push the publish button, because, you just feel a little vulnerable every time you create something, right? So everybody's probably not going to like you, and so it's okay. And, basically you want to work with clients who value you and appreciate you and your strengths. And I just don't chase people who don't get me. And I think Chris talks about it, the no-get-its. I'm not sure exactly how he says it, but figure out who your peeps are. And people who aren't your peeps, don't give them any attention. Don't give them any mind space. Be who you are on your podcast. Be transparent and real, and you will hear that if you listen to other podcasts, and you will notice how when you listen to other people being themselves, even if it's quirky or weird, it either repels you or attracts you, and you want some type of reaction from your podcast. You don't want to be so vanilla. Find out what your clients want and give it to them. And then last is, if you're listening to podcasts about podcasts, you might get this last one, which is mind trap, which I'm not a podcast star. I must be doing something wrong. So if you're listening to podcasts, they're going to talk about downloads and sponsors and Patreon and a lot of these other things that are good things if you are a full-time podcaster. I'm a full-time consultant business owner, and podcasting is just something I do to support my business. So don't worry about being a podcast star. My numbers are not fantastic. They are working in my business, and if I get more downloads and more sponsors and people want to donate to the podcast, that'll be icing on the cake. But at the end of the day, my focus is to provide value to clients, to build trust and interest with prospects, not to become a podcasting star. So, in closing, it's been quite a journey from when I started that day 2 years ago to today, feeling, when I felt sick to my stomach and as I hit the publish button, to today, 40-plus episodes later and 11,000 downloads. I can't wait for the next ones to be published. They are in the hopper now, and I've had improvements and good things happen. It's not all related to podcasting because I have been in business for 14 years and there's some momentum that gets built. But I do believe that podcasting has helped set me apart. So every client that I work with now is a repeat client. There are 3 or more follow-up projects for the past 3 or 4 years. My overall business sales have doubled, and my social media presence and connections have doubled. So, and I feel like I've just scratched the surface. So let's take some time for questions.